Welcome back to the Duramaxtuner.com shop. Owen's had his hands full these past couple of days with the traction bars. A lot of fabrication work, cutting, grinding, welding. In our last episode, we had mounted the rear end assembly to the spring packs in the rear and showed you all about the gears and the bigger yoke and the upgrades we were doing to the rear end. Now from there, we've obviously put wheels and tires on the truck, and we've mounted a whole mess of other driveline components between these frame rails, starting with the ever-important engine assembly. In our previous episodes, we've talked a lot about the engine and what upgrades we've made to it for the sled pulling competition. I'm not going to go into that again. What I will say is that we used a really nice set of solid motor mounts from Merchant Automotive, poly inserts, or a really robust motor mount that's going to keep this engine in place and make sure that it doesn't twist at all with the plumbing that we're going to put for our intercooling system. So things are going to be tight in that engine bay, and we want to make sure that that engine doesn't move and mess things up. Okay, now from those engine mounts we have to mount the transmission, but first we have to put the clutch assembly in place. We went with a triple disc clutch from South Bend. They gave us a big beefy flywheel and a bunch of inserts. Here Owen stacks the inserts into the flywheel assembly one at a time and loads up the final pressure plate, and then uses the alignment tool to make sure that the input shaft will slip into the clutch assembly. Torques the pressure plate down. We'll then lower the transmission in place using the forklift, get the transmission bolted up, and then install the transfer case, which we've done a Merchant Automotive pump rub kit in. So the transfer case is good to go, and we haven't made any upgrades to the internals of the transfer case or the transmission. They're pretty strong units and should be good at this power level as long as they're maintained and as long as geometry is good, so they're braced well. Okay, so the only thing left to do really is to connect this transfer case to the rear axle to get power to the rear wheels. And we're going to do that through this custom drive shaft that we had built. Now we used a 1480 yoke and rear U-joint, and we matched that on the front side of the drive shaft with a 1480 yoke and 1480 U-joint on the front. We also went with a 4-inch steel drive shaft that's got 83 thousandths wall. So this is a really serious drive shaft. We shouldn't have any drive shaft or U-joint failures back here as long as rear end geometry stays straight and true, as long as this pinion doesn't want to come up and bind. The way that we're going to maintain suspension geometry in the rear is through our traction bar setup. And that's what Owen's working on today. There's a lot of companies out there that make traction bars. We decided to fabricate our own, and the main reason is because our chassis is kind of a special length. And we just wanted to make sure everything fit exactly how it was supposed to. So we went out and bought some tubing. We got 1 3/4 inch tubing with 1/4 inch wall thickness, and we bought poly bushings for one end and Heim joints on the other end. These bars are going to be permanently mounted. The lowers are going to be permanently mounted. That's why I went with poly bushing in the rear. The upper bars, one end's going to be mounted to the top of the rear axle here, and then it's going to come up to the frame rail. And those are going to be both Heim joint, so that'll be not something you want to drive with. And those will be removable for street driving, because when you have a 4-link on the truck, it doesn't drive very nice. The only thing left really is to hook up that chain to the sled and hook the truck up and really deliver power through the sled. Okay, let me take you to the rear hitch. And then finally, connecting this powertrain to the sled is the hitch. Very important part and kind of a special piece for our Apache. Because the Apache is such a short truck, it really puts us at a disadvantage to the long wheelbase trucks in the class. Most of the rules packages allow for that by giving us a shorter distance to the center line of the rear axle from the hitch. So the shorter you can bring this hitch point to the rear axle, generally the better. The rule in our class is 27% of the wheelbase, which means a very short distance to the rear axle for our hitch. And you can notice the end of the frame rails here are still past our hitch. We went with a big Chevy hitch and drilled holes in the frame rail, got it mounted up. We're at 26 inches right here. The back end of the truck is going to come back here yet, so we'll have a roll pan and have a hole in it where the license plate can flip up. Then we can hook the chain up for the sled right here. So you got to push the rules as much as you can to be competitive, and that's what we've done with our hitch and just about everything else in the truck. See you next time. I'm Nick.